Political cartoons, by their nature, are supposed to get a reaction and encourage debate and discussion over even the most difficult subjects. But a cartoon in Monday's Boston Globe sparked outrage among police officers across the country. On one side, it shows a police officer holding a document for white people, their Miranda rights. On the other side, an officer has a similar paper for black people. It's their last rights. The cartoon was created by an artist for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Mike Lukovich, and reprinted by the Globe. On Wednesday, the Globe's op-ed section was packed with a number of responses from police organizations around the country, saying the Globe should be ashamed for publishing Mr. Lukovich's cartoon and the hate it embraces, and that in a sensitive time in our country, with racial tensions running high and riots in Milwaukee, the last thing we need is for the media to print inflammatory cartoons. Editorial page editor Ellen Clegg defended the Globe's decision, saying political cartoons by their nature are provocative no matter what the opinion expressed is. She added that the paper gave ample room for rebuttals. So really quickly, sort of a lightning round thing here. Let's go right to left. Too far, or is this a good cartoon?
You know, I'm gonna split the difference here. I think the Globe is perfectly justified in printing that cartoon. Cartoons like that are supposed to be provocative. On the other hand, I have some sympathy for the position of the Boston cops, many of whom have worked awfully hard to stay out of this morass of deteriorating relations with the community. And that's a nationally syndicated cartoon, not a Dan Wasserman cartoon. So, but the reader probably doesn't make that distinction and thinks, oh, they're lampooning the Boston police. Kind of unfair there.
I think the cartoon did what it's supposed to do. We're all talking about it. People wrote in about it, and writing in about it's really different than firing off an anonymous comment online. It takes a lot more of an investment. That said, I also think it's a great example of how there are many different media. And the landscape in Atlanta is very different than the landscape in Boston. The reputation of police in Atlanta is very different from the reputation of police in Boston. And frankly, the experience that a lot of people of color have does fit into what that cartoon is trying to illustrate. Does that mean that it worked here? I'm not sure that it worked here.
Dan?
I wrote about this for WGBHnews.org. You know, I don't blame the police for being offended by this. There's no question that they would be offended by it. At the same time, it was a very tough, provocative cartoon. I think the Globe was within its rights to run it, and I'm glad that they gave people ample opportunity to respond to it a couple of days later.
That was the right call,
Yeah, I'm with Dan. It sparked a conversation, and I think the best thing that came out of it was giving room for that conversation to happen. And I think running all those letters and that thoughtful response was a great way to kind of hash it out and localize the conversation.
I'll echo you. I think the fact that we're talking about it shows that it was an effective cartoon. Also, we got to contextualize the Boston police pushback here. This comes at a time where they have refused to enter a voluntary body camera pilot program. They've requested more weaponry, and they have refused to enter a mediation program that's been on the books for a while. The other thing I'd mention, Michelle McPhee, I believe, suggested that the cartoon depicted a bulbous, Irish nose. It was a phrase along those lines. I went back and looked at other Mike Lukovich cartoons. That's how he draws noses. This isn't a racist.
I couldn't tell the guy was Irish.